Thank you, everybody, joining us on Unlighten Me Experience. Jason Sisneros, the Bald Avenger, joined us today. We had a great conversation. We got about an hour into it and then had some technical difficulties. So instead of jumping into a whole nother hour segment, which would easily have happened, we went ahead and stopped it there. You're going to see that. And we're going to have him back on in a week or two. So we dive into a lot of things. A little bit of politics, a little bit of some of the charities and things that Jason are a part of, Feed a Billion, and dealing with human trafficking and sex trafficking, and even more. So we dive into a lot of topics in this hour. You guys are going to love it. If you do, which I know you will, click like, click subscribe, then hit that little bell thingy, because subscription apparently doesn't mean anything with YouTube anymore. Maybe share it a little bit, talk about it, and have a good time. Please comment below. Let me know what you think, and we'll see you guys soon. Thanks. All right, 3, 2, 1. All right, folks. Jason Sisneros, the Bald Avenger. I don't know exactly where that comes from, and we're gonna have to clarify that for my 7-year-old as we go through these things. But entrepreneur, public speaker, motivational speaker, philanthropist, involved in about everything under the sun, which made it really difficult on my end from a production standpoint to figure out what the hell we're going to talk about today. So, thanks for coming on, Jason. I appreciate it, man.
It's my pleasure to be here, man. Thanks for having me on. And it'll actually make it, because we have such a wide spectrum of things to talk about, it'll make it easier on us.
Yeah. See, I think so. I tend to believe that. And, but then it's sort of like, I've got this list of things here, which everybody will see, but, we may get to one of them, we may get to all of them, we may get to none of them. Okay.
Perfect.
But the most important thing in the world is the continuity and stability of a 7-year-old's brain, especially a 7-year-old boy. Okay.
Amen.
So I have to explain to him which Avenger you are and what your superpowers are. So you're going to, for him, because he watches the first, maybe 2.5, 3 minutes of every episode of mine, we got to explain that for him. Otherwise, I'm going to call you in the middle of the night and let you talk to him.
There you go. So the pre-cussing version, I like that. That we'll get that in for the kids, right? Exactly. This is also the place where we put the disclosure that this is an explicit conversation.
Yes, the warning's coming up in a second.
Exactly. So the Bald Avenger came about. It's really, we'll probably touch on this a lot while we're talking, but what I believe is that every human being has some sort of a superpower. And we say superpower because it's easy to understand. But I think what essentially boiled down, what that means is we all have the potential for greatness. Not all of us accept it. Not all of us optimize the greatness, the potential that we have. And for me, it came about in a little bit of a silly way, just having a conversation. Some of the things I do in child rescue, Feed a Billion, all the philanthropic stuff that I do. And one day somebody says, you're kind of like a Bald Avenger. And it kind of stuck. And then I started, when I would, sign into things, I would put the Bald Avenger. And then it got to a point where we said, all right, how do we build an audience? Because as I've in philanthropy, what I've figured out is that celebrity drives a lot of eyeballs to the things that you care about. And so we would bring in people like Ashton Kutcher and those sort of people. And finally, one day I said, why don't, after dealing with so many of them and finding out that very few of them are actually genuine, Ashton's is an exception to that rule. That man is pure gold, pure heart, and is helping a lot of things in the world. But for a lot of them, it's just show up, get the check, take the picture, leave. Yeah. And so for me, I've built a fairly successful company. And I decided, we're just sitting around the boardroom saying, what could we do? And I said, well, why don't I become a celebrity? And it was I was kind of half joking, but, 2 people around the room didn't laugh. Everybody else did. And they said, well, I think he's kind of serious. And so we what do we do? Do I go to Hollywood to be in a few movies? I've got a face made for radio. So maybe that's not it. I'm only missing 2 things that great actors have: good looks and talent. So, yeah. So what I decided was, why don't we just go down the comedy route? Because some of the greatest people that have shaped and influenced our dialogue, our national dialogue, have been comedians. From now I've just lost George Carlin, and and the of his ilk. They said important things and made it funny for us to accept. And so I decided to go that route. the Bald Avenger came up, and you can see behind me, I had a really good graffiti spray paint artist come in and do this background. And there's a lot to it, but essentially what happens is when you or I are called to action to protect people that are in a weaker position, not weaker than us, but are in a weaker position, whether that's physically, spiritually, money wise, those type of things, we're called to stand up for them. And in my entire life, you can ask all of my friends, I would stand up for them and when they were up against a bully. And so and my daughter, when we were at the zoo one time, she looked in the thing and she said there was an ape in there, and she goes, a gorilla, a silverback gorilla. And she goes, "Daddy, it's you."
Oh,
so, and it's kind of like when I get angry for other people, I sort of turn into this red, ape that wants to protect my tribe. And so we kind of all gathered that together, and we had no idea when we went to put in for the trademark whether we would get it or not, but we did. And so I'm actually the trademarked Bald Avenger.
See, so since it's trademarked, I'll tell you that. So on the overlay that you can't see on this thing is I actually used I stole your logo and put it next to your name, so people will see that. So make sure we get the verbal okay that I can do that, and
absolutely got it. And the logo, because all of my companies, the ones that are worth the most money, have like 2 letters in them that we put zero thought into the actual logo. This one's important. The shield on there is where in domestic violence that I was given the nickname the Shield from A New Dawn and the ladies that we work with in that area. And then the scales of justice are kind of keeping in the middle, like politically, I like to talk about politics, but from a middle, what can we do about things? There's great ideas on the left, great ideas on the right, and somewhere in the middle is what has made this country great. So there's that. And then obviously the red ape and all those kind of things. So it's a good logo. I like it.
No, I liked it. That's why I was like, oh, let me steal this thing and throw that on there for you. I mean, really for you, it's, you know how that goes. But so I do want to talk about that. You recently started the Bald Avenger podcast, correct?
Yes, the baldavengershow.com.
Okay, and that's exactly what I wanted to get to. And that's, so this is a selfish question. Are you doing web calls primarily, or are you having some in person, or are you just mixing it up?
It's a mix. Okay. I have a studio here. We did, A New Dawn, all those ladies, and fantastic show, by the way. And they always go off the rails. All of my shows go off the rails because there's really no holding back when you're talking about truth. And so we do some in studio and we do some distance.
Okay, so on the in studio ones are great. I mean, because that's here. I've got the studio. I do the whole thing. I love it. It's engaging. It's authentic. You can't escape the authenticity of in person. So the web call thing, how do you keep that genuine and authentic? Does that make sense? Because it is tough.
It's a great question. Now, if I could give a specific answer, what I would say is that most of the people that come on, I do a pre-call with most of my people.
Yeah.
And they've, a lot of them have seen my stuff before, and they know not to come in with any bullshit because I will rip it to shreds. It really just basically come in, be authentic, and let the world judge kind of what's valuable and what's not valuable. But what I do know for 100% sure, and this, is that inauthenticity, it does more damage than it'll ever do good.
Yeah. Oh, by far.
Yeah. And so that's what, I've 8-miled myself so many times about the mistakes I've made. I wrote a book about all my mistakes. So authenticity is kind of my thing, and people know not to come in and try to lie or put a pretty coating on things.
See, I like it. So now I do it a little different. I don't do the pre-call.
Yeah.
Because I like when something is new or fresh, I like to be caught off guard.
Yes.
I like to be kept on my toes. I like to be able to keep thinking. So it's like anytime that every person that I've had on, even in studio, that is that I know them well or that I've had a lot of conversations with them, it seems like I lose that little bit of energy. And so I'm kind of like, you know what? I'm going to go just moderately prepared and then bounce and ebb and flow with what goes on. And for me, I love it. I get a lot of criticism for that.
Yeah.
He says a lot of people are like, dude, call me beforehand. Dude, do this. Hey, do this.
Yeah.
I'm like, you know what? Not me. I don't want to lose.
Yeah.
I don't want to
Well,
lose
it's
the
not me
aspect.
either. So we should have a great show. I don't prepare even my speeches. Like every single time I go, to give a talk in front of whether it's 30 people or 10,000 people or on a national broadcast, I go with an idea of what I'm going to talk about. And not one single time have I ever gone off of my prepared notes.
See,
Because to be present like you are, to be present and talk about the thing that's important is the thing that people are going to eventually need to hear. And it's also interesting.
See,
So I love that approach.
So I'm gonna go dive straight into the politics part of this and get it out of the way. Because,
Let's do it.
Yeah, we've got 50% love the heck out of Trump and 50%, want to see him jump off the deep end and so on and so forth and all those evil things too.
Yeah.
So without getting into your history, because we know that you came from, drug sales and collecting. I love the way you said that right before we started. Not collecting the drugs, collecting the things from the people. Sometimes that could be knuckles, teeth, hair, spines, whatever. But, the collection side.
All that.
Some of your charity work with human trafficking, sex trafficking, things of that nature. Let's attack some of your perspectives on the wall, the barrier, the fence, whatever the heck people are calling it. I mean, do you think there's any impact? Do you think it'll help some? Not? Kind of what's your overview of that?
Well, again, like I try to do with everything, those scales of justice, I try to look at it from two different perspectives. And when it comes to trafficking and for me, nothing is really, I try to do my best not to base things on a political tribe. Right. What I try to do is I try to look at the problem and then how do you leave it? I have to. That's my business, right? I mean, in order for you to turn a profit, you've got to look at things for what they are, not for what they aren't. And the problem is that everybody thinks they have an opinion right now, and their opinions are very, very shallow. They just want to line up with Republicans or they just want to line up with Democrats. And unfortunately, or fortunately for us, the answer is always a mix of the two, right? Exactly. And so when somebody says a wall is immoral, that's a political talking point. When somebody says we're going to build a 2,000-mile wall, it's completely idiotic. Yeah. That's what I'm saying. There's two sides of everything, and what you got to do is look at the problem and trafficking specifically. And the guy that started Operation Underground Railroad, which is one of the entities I work with about 6 in the trafficking world. Tim Ballard did a really, really great interview on Fox News the other day talking about this specific item, saying that it just, a wall is a pause in somebody being able to take a little girl from a family in Mexico or in the United States and go across the border. It's a pause. Is it the end all be all? No, it's not. There's a lot of other things that need to go with it. All the technology that they talk about, the drones and all that kind of stuff. It's not a simple build the wall and that's it. And it's not a simple just put technology in place and that's it. Because both of them working in concert, and everybody that has any sort of integrity-based intellect knows that that's true. You've got one side that voted $25 billion for barriers and all this other kind of stuff, and now not one red cent.
Yeah, it's silly.
To me, to me, you're supposed to be the adults, right? That's what leadership is supposed to be. It's supposed to be the adults in the room, and both sides act childish, and what we're supposed to do as the electorate, as citizens, like as engaged citizens, is to investigate the actual problem and the challenge, and then listen to both sides and come to a conclusion that we can all agree to that's non-political based. It's outcome based.
Right.
Unfortunately, that's not the world we live in right now, but I can tell you that barriers work. Barriers are necessary. So is technology. I don't think that putting up a barrier between us and Mexico is a racist activity.
Yeah,
I just,
no, that's silly.
Because if it was, then it would have been racist under Obama, and that's just silly,
Exactly, yeah.
And it would be a racist under Trump, and it's just not either way. What we do is we have a problem of opioids, and yes, they come in through other ways, and they come in through the air, and we have overstays of visas. All of that stuff is relevant. It's not lies, but to negate the other argument, to basically destroy somebody that's in your same boat. He's the president of the United States. He's just like Obama was, and to destroy them puts a hole in the boat that we're all floating in. And I don't understand that at all.
It seems silly. And sort of my 2 cents on that part of it is that I just can't understand why anyone would disrespect the seat or position of the president of the United States. That blows my mind. Because no matter if they won the electoral or the popular or this or that, they won. They're there. They were elected. They were properly elected. Respect the seat. And respect the seat doesn't mean don't debate, don't challenge, don't do. I mean, yes, by all means, challenge every aspect of it, because that's how we learn and we grow and we do these things. But I don't want to go off into my political tangent. Just people need to understand we're not a democracy. We're a republic. And then go Google that and see the differences, and you'll understand.
Yeah, it's a constitutional republic, to be very specific, right?
Exactly. Yeah, exactly.
And the point being of those two sides, Donald Trump, personality wise, makes it tough for people to separate the office from the person, right?
Right.
And whatever you think about him ends up coloring that. So when people look at that, they go, why in the world would I respect a position when this guy's not respectable? And that's coming from their perspective. And then you've got other sides that say it's just a personality issue. Look at all the good things he's done. And somewhere in the middle is the fact that he's our president. The same thing happened with Obama. The same thing happened with Bush. The same thing happened with Clinton. The same thing will happen with the next person. The challenge, or the thing that I'm worried about, is that the next president comes in, the Democrats are training the Republicans on how to treat that president and to attack them and to investigate them and to do all these things. Just vote him out. Like, you know what I mean? Win the argument, right? Instead of bringing and executing on all of these things that I think are doing damage to our company or to our country. Yeah.
Which is a company. You can be honest.
It is. It's the LLC or Inc. USA Inc.
Because so many people they'd have that sort of Freudian slip when they talk about our country / company, and it just cracks me up. So the wall issue, clearly a majority come through, the air, through the water, through roadways, through things like that. I'm talking trafficking, even drugs. I mean, they're saying, I've heard things as high as 92% of all these opioids, all these things come through current ports
of entry.
Right. So the wall isn't necessarily going to affect those. But this is me, and this kind of comes back from some of the things I saw through my years of service and even years of humanitarian efforts and things of that nature outside of that in other countries, not just here, but in other countries. What are you as a person or country or entity willing to pay to save the life of one child?
That's the question. At the end of the day, that's the one question that matters. And human trafficking is different than all the opioids and all that kind of stuff, because when you come through the air, there's people. I mean, I just posted something on my Facebook where, this lady caught this guy that was flying this young woman on a plane, and they caught him and were able to rescue her. When it's the middle of the night and it's in, and it's along our long open border, it's a lot easier for you to bring or smuggle in a child or other humans that are being used. I mean, because it's not just children is the most heinous side of it that are being traded for sex. But there's also people that are being held in slavery to work, sorry about that.
Yeah.
And, that are being held in slavery to be utilized for financial gain, which is, it's horrible. More slavery exists today than the entire history of the transatlantic trade, which is amazing. And I've gotten in debates over that. That's math. That's math.
Oh yeah. And it is. I'm just going to use the modern slavery is far more populous and far more of a problem than just the sex trafficking or just the children. The children are a smaller portion, just being real, but still they do. I mean, that's just the more intense, grotesque side of things. So it's just, you made it, you said a word that was perfect for the wall, and the way that I've discussed this with a lot of people is you said it creates a pause.
Yes.
Okay. That pause allows law enforcement or ICE or the technology or anything else to zero in on these things in a much more efficient and proper manner. Yes, exactly.
To react.
So, it's just one of those things. And I just kind of wanted your 2 cents, clearly coming from a history of your life that you dealt with some of this. And then obviously because you're in San Diego, right?
No, well, I mean, sometimes. But
okay, sometimes. but still, so you see some
Denver,
of that.
Denver, Denver's my main base, and then I'll also Salt Lake and California. Like, I'm all over the place.
So when you're in Southern California, you see some of these things. I'm in South Texas. I'm in Houston, south side of Houston, so I see a whole lot of it, and I'm still, whatever, 6 miles away from the border. Does that make sense? I mean, or 6 hours, of a drive, and but you see it all the time. You see these things, and I like that perspective that you have, that it is a middle thing. A wall is not immoral. A wall is not racist. We want to help people. We are one of the most generous countries in the world by far. If you put in,
try getting into Canada. Have you ever tried to get into Canada? I mean, I've been into countries in the Middle East that are easier to get into than Canada.
It's post 9/11, right? So this was like 2010, I think. This is Canada, and I'm going across the Canadian border. My wife and I, we flew into Buffalo, and we rented a car so we could drive across and see some of the scenery going through. So we're driving into Canada for a bodybuilding competition, a world championship and all this nonsense, but to Toronto. I almost didn't get in to the country because my paperwork wasn't perfectly right coming through. And I was just like, I just like, I can see the arena where I'm going. I just want to go right there. That's it. And it almost didn't happen.
No, I mean, that's what I'm saying. People that, again, it's this thing that it's this shallow knowledge base that we have allowed ourselves to become with social media, thinking that, these online mobs and people, the problem with a mob is that it's going to turn against you at some point in your life, one way or the other. If you do anything of any value, the mob will turn against you. So the feeding of that is basically feeding the individual's destruction that is actually participating in it. And I really believe that trolls and these mob, look, if there's something that you think is going wrong in the world, you should fight like hell to get to go against that thing. I mean, 2 million little kids being trafficked around the world for sexual purposes from sexual predators is something that I will fight tooth and nail and have put my life on the line. You put your life on the line for this country, for ideals that you believe. And we should do that. Right. But when it comes down to fighting over petty political things, I think that you're doing damage to your children and to the future. And a lot of people just don't care. They just don't care because once they're dead, what do I care? It's all this right now and all about me society that we've built, rather than going deep and becoming intellectually, having intellectual integrity about having thoughts about things. A lot of my friends, I've got wild left wingers and I've got wild right wingers that I fight with all the time. I got told about my podcast because that's where my message is. It's listening to both sides and then coming up with the right solution. I get told all the time, Jason, the only thing in the middle of the road is roadkill. Right? Because there's no money unless you're creating controversy and gathering a mob. And that was why I started it. I've made my money in private equity and my other businesses, so I could be a voice of what I consider sanity. I mean, some people think I'm an asshole too. I don't, what I'm trying to do is to leave a better world for my kids and my grandkids than exists today. And we lose that perspective, right? If you go back and you look at and listen to and read anything about architecture, it used to be the grandfather thought it up, broke ground, got the foundation in place. He would pass away, go on to the son, and then the son would build up the structure and start on the inside. He would pass away, be given to the son, and the son would see it completed. Right. But we don't think generationally anymore. We think about us and we think about our moment rather than the damage that's happening. That one of the guys that I completely disagree with politically, Professor, oh man, I just forgot his name, but
that's it. We'll get it.
We'll get to it. But point is that he fights for freedom of speech and those types of things, and he's a Democrat. Well, he's actually coming out for Trump on the things that they're doing and the way that they're investigating him and whatnot. And I can see his face clear as day. It's driving me crazy. But but he has intellectual integrity, because he's fighting for the freedom of speech. He's fighting for the freedom for us to, if we vote somebody into office, then we should support them and then fight like hell to get them back out of office if we disagree with them. Right.
Exactly. Yeah.
Dershowitz,
Okay,
Alan
yeah.
Dershowitz.
Yeah.
Yeah. And he got, he's been totally ostracized from, his comfortable position in the Democratic Party, because he dare say the same thing in protection of the other side.
Yes.
That he was saying for years and years and years and built his career on when he was fighting for the progressives and the Democratic side.
Man, I wish I could remember the label they gave him. They gave him this new term it's alt-right something.
Yeah.
And
and for years he was like the champion of progressive values. And then all of a sudden he goes, wait a minute, all of those things I fought against now are being employed against Donald Trump. I have to say something. Exactly. And I became a huge fan of his, not because he's not by any means, he voted for Hillary Clinton. Yeah. And so by no means is he a Donald Trump fan. I think he despises the man. But fundamentally, what made this country great and what would keep it great has to be argued for when it's being employed against someone that you disagree with or don't like personally.
Well, that is the most important time to fight for rights, is when you're protecting those exact rights that are afforded to you.
When it's not easy to do
with.
so.
Exactly.
Yep, when it's not easy to do so.
Exactly. I want to switch gears a little bit, because I want to talk a little bit about the billion meals.
Okay.
And I saw a little bit of the news clip and things of that nature, and I didn't dive too deep into it, although I understand the premise, I understand the fundraising, and I know some of the matching and things that are going on with it. I want you to tell me a little bit about it, but I have a question. I was primarily brought up in a Buddhist mentality, if that kind of makes sense, more of a worldview mentality. And so the first thing I thought when I saw this, I was like, oh, that's kind of cool. And then bing, a light went off on my head. And I was like, are they actually handing out meals, or are they handing out meals and teaching people to provide for themselves? For example, we're taught, one of the silly little lessons that we have is it better to give hungry people, the melon, or is it better to give them the ways to grow the melon?
Sure.
Right. So do you fix the immediate need, or do you fix the larger need, which fits into kind of what you were saying a second ago, generationally, how we adjust our perspective generationally. So definitely, because I love the project. So tell me a little bit about the project, but more importantly, I want to know sort of the mechanics of the project. I think that's
well, you hit on something that's fundamentally deeper in your question, right? Which is something that I bounce up against all the time. And it comes out in your question is very kind, and I understand it, right? But there's a lot of people where we'll go out and we'll be talking about human trafficking, and they'll be like, somebody will stand up in the audience and go, well, don't you know that they just get re-trafficked again and blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, and I look at the crowd sometimes, and literally I did this. It was a crowd of like 4,000 or 5,000 people. And I go, hey, asshole, would you rather I have not fucking saved her in the first place?
Exactly.
You know what I mean? Like,
exactly.
and I just went off on stage because, but what your point is well taken is that, are we teaching them? We're not. Feed a Billion is not. It's taking away the immediate crisis of starvation. That's the entire reason that it exists. No education, no building of, because when I look at, what are the things that lead to trafficking? Okay. It's a insecurity when it comes to fiscal position in life. That means feeding, putting a roof over your head, safety, security, those kind of things. And so parents sometimes have to make decisions to sell their kids. Sometimes they are in a position where the parents die of starvation. They're left as orphans. Now you're left to the spiritual positioning of where they end up. Sometimes they're left completely alone. And there's a lot of wolves out there that are looking to take advantage of the weak. Right. And so what we said was with Feed a Billion, and with, you'll hear the same thing from Tim Ballard, who started Operation Underground Railroad, and with A New Dawn, is that we have to pick, and why I'm involved in so many. We support about 80 different charities, and they're all in alignment of creating a different environment. Right. Because there are charities out there that help fundamentally retrain people. There's charities out there that are teaching skill sets. There's charities out there that are building schools. There's a whole bunch of this charitable Buddhist mentality that says, we're all on the same ship. We need to support and love and lift each other up. Right. Feed a Billion, and the ones, they're very specific in their outcome. It's in the name, Feed a Billion, right? A New Dawn is very specific about long-term transitional housing for victims of domestic violence and their children. Okay. Operation Underground Railroad is about the rescue, but they're also helping other charities that set up the adoption centers and job retraining and psychological uplifting and all that kind of stuff. So one entity can't do it all, right? And all one person can do is all they can do, which is why we started up this support system to help multiple charities build foundational strength from business. I bring this from the business world. I just give it away. I don't charge. We give it away to all these charities about how to build their foundation. And then also even my consulting company that we built, we work with companies that in their P&L, in other words, their profit and loss, with their checkbook, they're writing checks to charities, because those people all help. If you're just looking for a bigger house and another Ferrari, you're not my customer,
right?
Because I'm looking to hit a pebble. I mean, my pebble, I got a pebble to throw in the pond, one a day, boom, one a day. And when I help 50 companies be able to make a multiple of $50 to $100 million, and they're already writing checks, I know that there's going to be money there for the other charities. When I'm helping the foundation of a charity, I know that they're going to be more sustainable over time without me being there, just like my companies are. They're going to be more sustainable over time, so they get more work done. It's all in alignment. And so the foundation of your question, I'm glad you asked it, because I don't get to address it very often, which is, you've got to find whatever it is that you're passionate about. You've got to figure out a way to support multiple different approaches to it. And the charitable world has to stop being a bunch of little bitches and fighting with each other over resources. There's enough to go around for everybody. And because you're not getting enough time or attention or accolades or pats on the back or whatever it is, I get attacked more inside the philanthropic world than I do anywhere else. Yeah. Why? Because, Jason got so much attention. That's the only reason. I don't need to do this shit. That's the only reason I talk about this stuff, is to get attention, not for me. I don't need it. It's attention for the kids that need it. It's attention for the abused women that are forgotten and lost and swept under the rug and left behind, and people that don't pay attention to them. Somebody like us has to stand up and go, fucking Bald Avenger, let me make up a silly name and go out there and bring a bunch of attention to this stuff. Because, hey, pay attention. Little kids are getting raped every single day, right? There is people that are starving, not starvation related. 1, 2, 3, 4. Somebody just dropped dead of starvation on this planet when there's plenty of food and there's distribution and control that's stopping it. Exactly. Every 11 seconds, there's a domestic violence occurrence, right? So these are the statistics that you got to get out of, inside of charity. I'm speaking to charity people that are in charity. Stop being so petty. If you're going to complain about the junior high students that we have running the U.S. government, stop acting like one yourself,
Exactly.
And I literally had that. I had a guy that literally goes on and does undercover missions. And he was like, oh, blah, 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 and was complaining and whining and bitching because the fact that I was drawing attention to this idea, and I'm like, are you fucking kidding? Like that day I was like, I mean, I walked around in a daze for probably 2 hours going, what is happening?
People's common sense has evaporated to a large degree. Not everyone. Please, I don't want everybody. I don't want all the hate mail. Not everyone, but a large number of people with any sort of authority or power, for some reason, in the last 10 years, that common sense has evaporated. But it was you hit a couple of points that I love. I want to kind of reiterate. The thing about other charities complaining and such that someone else is getting more attention and things of that nature, over resources and such. The deal, my perspective on that is this: what you're doing with Feed a Billion is exactly what I think almost every charity should do, and be, for lack of better terms, be niche, be specific, be focused, be honed, because it's the fact that you're providing meals. You're not saying that they don't need education and they don't need this other help. It's not. You're saying this is a gap, this is a hole, we're trying to fill it, and there's other people that can fulfill this specific need. And I think the problem with so many charities nowadays, they get too broad. They want to do everything. And it's
just like every other business that exists out there. They think that they do so many things. One of the largest companies in the history of the world, Apple, prides themselves on what they say no to, not what they say yes to.
Exactly.
And when you start a charity, there's so many beautiful things about people that start charities. There's a niche of people that are doing it because they want attention for themselves, and they're just attention whores, and that that's the. But when you're a genuine, like, heart-centered person, you start a 501c3. One of the things is, I have enough heart that my charity is going to go out there, and I ask them very specifically, what is your measurable outcome? Well, we're going to change the earth through communication. What the fuck does that mean? And how are you going to do it? You know what I mean? No, there's 2 million kids being traded. How do we get that to 1.5? How do we get that to 1? There's a Feed a Billion. We have 1 billion meals that we want to provide in a specific time frame, right? When we're talking about the long-term deal for a New Dawn, right? The long-term crisis housing and transitional housing, it cost X amount of dollars. They had a 5-year plan to be able to build this. We did it in 18 months, right?
Awesome.
And because they're focused. And the problem is that people get in and they don't have any business sense, which is why we have this, it's a stupid thing. It's called the Jason Sisneros Charity Resources page on Facebook. Okay. And once a month I go in there and I just teach about business and how to structure their deal. And anybody that has a 501c3 and can provide their paperwork can come in for free. We don't allow any selling to them. We just support them on these fundamentals of how to build their actual business. And it is a business. Your profit may not be money, but your profit is lives. Your profit is meals. Your profit is how many women can you get into this transitional housing? You know, that's your profit.
Right.
And so it's still the business fundamentals, and that's just the way my brain works. But you're right. You're 100% right.
No, it is. And it's what I think is kind of comical to me a little bit is that these charities, by fighting over these resources, are doing the exact same things that they're trying to combat. Because one of the first things you talked of is that, you know, why are these children or adults being enslaved or trafficked in and things of that nature? It's because their resources are significantly lower than what's comparable to where they can get to.
Yes.
Right. And obviously, and that's the most simplistic way I can put it. But it's just when they do that, that's exactly what the charities are doing. They're creating the exact same environment. So then the donors, the general population, are probably going to hesitate more, like they do. And they're like, oh, okay, yeah, for every dollar I give, how much goes to these people? 2 cents, 3 cents? You know, you get into that mentality of so many donors, which then means less people are helping, which means you're exacerbating the problem.
That's right.
Which I can't.
You know, to use your terminology of the wall, right? You're either building a wall of solution or you're tearing down a wall. I mean, you have to fight. When you go to Africa, you know, you have to fight the embedded control, because money over there means very little. Mm-hmm. It's food. Right. You know, and so when a warring tribe can control incoming food and all this other kind of stuff, it's getting engaged. You know, I appreciate the money that comes in, but it's knowledge, it's intellect, it's having the empathy to be able to engage with people. Because when we're trying to feed a child, or we're trying to rescue a little girl somewhere in the world, or a little boy, or some woman just got her teeth all completely knocked out, her jaw broken, and her kids all watch that happen. I don't care if you're a Republican. I don't care if you're a Democrat. What I care is that you're a fucking human being, and that you care and that you engage, you know, and that's what we need to do, is stop retreating into our fantastical, you know, fantasy world of social media, you know, and be real. I mean, and the problem is that with being real, you're going to find out that I'm a flawed human being. You know, absolutely. I'm going to find out that you're a flawed human being. And in those flaws is what used to create beauty and it used to create a standard of activity where human beings would try to become better because they were engaged with their humanity and their fellow humans in a genuine fashion, not this fake shit that's going on Facebook and Instagram and all the other kind of shit. You know, you got somebody that's got a great ass that has, 17 million followers.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay. And then you've got somebody that's saving little girls and little boys or whatever it is that has 1,000 followers.
Right.
It's completely flip-flopped as to what's important.
It is. And I have this conversation a million times as far as legitimacy on social media and things like that. A good pair of tits and ass gets all the attention, and then all the substantial information, no matter what it is, saving lives or science or gets nothing, almost negative attention, which is insane. I don't know how we flip it, because dealing with a lot of the things that we're talking about, and just say a lot of the major issues of the world, if we can somehow start a spark or plant a seed to start adjusting how people view and use social media to trend that towards more things of more actual importance, this entire global change instantly. It will be overnight. The global perspective will be, it'll be a 180, a 360, however you want to math that out. I just don't know how to do that.
Yeah, well, you see the hashtag Misfit Nation on all of my stuff, right? And what happened was a couple years ago, we had a group of people come together around what I was talking about, because I just had it. I just had it. I'm like, nobody's saying the stuff that I'm feeling. And so I started saying it, and it just kind of grew into this crazy thing. And then somebody said, we're misfits. And then somebody started hashtagging Misfit Nation. I didn't come up with it, but the group of people that follow, and that we're building is called Misfit Nation. And what that means is it's somebody that has fucked up in life, is not going to live there. They're going to forgive themselves. They're going to apologize for the mistakes they made, and they're going to stop doing the thing that was causing, pain or suffering in the world. And then they're going to use those lessons to serve back into the world in general. And that's really what the Misfit Nation is all about. And it's a crazy group of people that have all had massive mistakes, and now they are dedicated and addicted to serving other people. And so that's the spark that I think that I wanted to start, that I want to be a part of, that I want to fan into a flame. And that's why the Bald Avenger show even exists in the first place.
See, I'm going to need to I'm going to jump onto that a little bit. So I'm going to wind up taking the coattails of that one and sliding when we get off of here and future things, because it's, that ties kind of into what I want to tap into next. So a buddy of mine, Dan Crenshaw, who was on my show before he was elected and just starting that process and things that into Congress.
Love that guy.
He's awesome. An amazing guy, and getting there and doing those things. And he sparked something in me that made me start thinking of attempting public service, right? Either through politics or through something along those lines. And here's the obstacle I came into, and then this is a broader question to get your perspective. So I've been through a divorce. It was a horrible, ugly, nasty custody battle, right? Yep. In those things, especially in the state of Texas, the mother's word is everything. It's gold, it's star, anything that is said, they all this kind of stuff. It was super nasty. But because of that divorce, if that makes sense, I will not, because of the nastiness of that, there's no way I could ever be elected to public office. Right. And the reality of me, I've never had a speeding ticket. I've never been arrested. I've never been, accused of things. I've never been, nothing. Like when I say a squeaky clean, highly decorated life, that is an understatement. And that sounds egotistical. It's not. I'm just trying to pan that in there. But the fact that I went through an ugly custody battle and was accused of everything under the sun that was unsubstantiated to all degrees, anyone that's gone through them, they know. I can't. There's no way I could serve. There's no way. So how do people correct that? Like, where's
it's a great question, and a lot of it comes down to your individual belief. I mean, you are, like you said, squeaky clean, decorated. You went through this one bad thing. I actually cheated in my marriage. Like I actually went bankrupt. Like I actually fucked up different companies. Like I did shit. I've been to jail. I've, You know,
Yeah.
I was a drug dealer. I was a collector, like all of these things. I actually did that shit. And so when I very first started to come out for charities, you know, I got a lot of blowback, and I had to step back, and I had this conversation with my mom, because the first article I did that was in Forbes about me, you know, basically what I got called was a liar about the things that I said. And what they were questioning was the fact that my adopted father went to prison for trying to kill me and my mom when I was 17. And so they did a little bit of background, couldn't find the you know, the documentation or whatever. And basically it was going to go the opposite direction.
Right.
And so, you know, when I did that, I mean, obviously there's articles, cause I was, you know, fairly visible football player, wrestler, you know, sports figure in that area. And it was big news kind of all up and down the corridor there in Colorado. And so I have those, and then we have the court proceedings, and we have the fact that he got 33 years for attempted murder, you know,
Right.
and all of that stuff. And I sent it off to him, and it was all kind of smoothed over. But I sat down with my mom and I said, is this worth it? You know, because I have a perfectly fine life. I've made plenty of money. I'm not doing any of this for money. You know, none of the show or the comedy or anything that I'm doing, and the work that I do with charities. I don't take money. I give hundreds of thousands. We about $3 million that we brought in for charities over the course of the last 12 months. Like I don't take any money from those activities. But I had the same question in my mind, and it was a belief system that I had to say, you know what? If I stop here, what are my children going to think of me?
Right.
Even if they never found out, right? Even if they never found out, if I cowered under mistakes in a human being that I'm not, and this is in science. There's no cell of you that was alive, you know, that was alive 10 years ago. It's all been replaced. We're not the same, literally, physically not the same person.
Right.
Now, mentally, we grow and we do all these kind of things. And the problem is we have people in our lives that remember something that we did wrong. And those are the people that go on social media. Hey, did you know that Jason did this? Did you know that Jason did that? Blah, 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 to try to destroy the credibility that you have in service.
Right.
Right. Because they don't want you to get bigger than they are. And those are called trolls. And I reverse the way that I believe about that, because there's people that are out there. I have done real harm in my life, real harm. And I've done my best to make amends for it. And I'm certainly not doing those things today. Right.
Right.
And so when they come out of the woodwork, I just feel like they're giving me all of their creativity. They're giving me all their power, like a superpower, right? When you see some of the people, they suck the energy out of somebody else and they become stronger and stronger. That's how I feel. That's that big red ape behind you gets fed by negative energy, because they're giving us their valuable asset called time, energy. Our names are in their mouth, like all that kind of stuff. So when you look at your scenario, I can't imagine anything that you've done was worse than saying on a recording, I'm going to grab her by the pussy.
Yeah. You would think that.
President of the fucking United States.
Yeah. Exactly.
So whatever happened with you, you know, if you decide you want to serve, I'm never going to run for public office, because they destroy people. And that's what that's what they're trying to do. If you brought any of the founding fathers forward today, they would be destroyed. They were all cheaters and drunks and slave owners and all racist and all of the other stuff that goes along. All of them were that. And today, these panty waist